Hello, this is Henrik Bashman. I'm a software developer in Toronto. My website is internetcommons.ca, and this is the third screencast of a series that I call What is Drupal, in which I put forward the proposition that a good way to understand Drupal in a concrete and structured way is to think of it in terms of these 5 key properties: a resource manager, a configuration manager, a content manager, a state change machine, and a rapid application development tool. So in this screencast, I'm going to be looking at the second major aspect of Drupal as a resource manager, namely the database. Drupal uses a relational database, typically MySQL, although PostgreSQL and others can also be used. It uses it as a standard relational database, but it does have a special approach using something called entities, which I'll get into in a little bit of detail. The demonstration website that I'm using for this is one of my own websites called vegetablediet.ca. It just talks about certain ways of a particular way of eating. So here is the database for the vegetable diet website, and first thing you notice is that there are really a lot of tables, 118 in this case. Last time I looked it was 115. System creates quite a few tables on its own. So the first observation is that there are a lot of them, which essentially means that you don't want to go in there and be messing around with the data directly. Essentially, it's complex enough that you really want Drupal to be handling the interaction with the database itself, and not mess around with it for fear of creating unwanted side effects. There are a lot of system tables, batch handling, block definition, custom blocks, block roles. There are a lot of cache tables. Drupal relies on caching quite a lot in order to improve performance. I gather that these can actually be emptied safely, although there is a way through the interface to do that most of the time. There are tables that are installed by modules. So, for example, CAPTCHA is a module that I just installed that would account for one of the increases of size and the number of tables involved. There's a table for comments, contacts. CTools is a module, date fields. There's a display suite, some display suite tables. These other tables, the tables that begin with field, the field prefix, are part of the entity scheme of Drupal that I'll get into a little bit. There's some file tables, media tables. Node queue is one of the modules that's installed. There's the basic node table, which is the essentially the primary repository of the content that's displayed to the user. And on it goes. This is what you see is what you get module. There's the views module, internal Drupal variables that are stored. So you could say that Drupal is a table-driven application. And indeed, the reason that so much of Drupal is able to be managed through the configuration interface is because the table structure here is sophisticated enough to hold that configuration information and merge it with the code in intelligent ways. And in fact, the code itself quite often can influence the content of the tables, which in turn is used to organize presentation of information to the user. It can be helpful at times to understand the table structure in order to pull information out of it. So, for example, I have a little bit of code here that pulls the title of a node Q out of the database and presents it as a page title to the user. So you can see there's a database query being constructed here, which essentially goes to the node Q table and asks for the content of the title field. So here is the node Q table, and there is the title field. And so in the query, I just specify the QID and am returned the appropriate record, and all I have to do is pull out the title field and then present that to the user. So there's the Q title being pulled out of that particular table, and then I just assign that to the title slot of the array of the view that is presenting the information. So the result of that is that when I go to this queue called basics, then this title of basics is pulled out of the database. When I go to recipes, this title recipes is pulled out of the database, presented to the user there, and likewise with shopping and processing and so forth. So it is helpful to have those kinds of insights into the database. But really the most interesting thing about the database is this concept of entities. Entities is something that seems to have evolved in the Drupal community over a number of years. And is kind of a elaboration of the concept of a table. So let me just go in here and have a look at a node. So here's a node that just has a bit of text and a picture associated with it. Here's another one. Let's have a look at curried fish recipe, which has 3 pictures associated with it. And that is accomplished by adding 3 images to the image field of the node. That ability to treat a field as a table, in other words, treat a field as a repository for more than one pieces of information, turns out to be very, very useful for a very large space of issues that come up in developing website applications. So let me show you how this is done on the interface. So I have a stack item here, which is, as is true of any of these content types, consists of fields and displays. So in the Manage Fields area, really what I've done is added an image field. That was an existing field from this drop down, and then configured the image field to hold any number of images, and that is done here. The number of values, which can be set to a particular number from 1 to 10, or unlimited. So let me show you how that is actually implemented in the database. So again, here we have the PHP MySQL view of the database. What I'm going to do is look for the node table, and we'll just have a quick peek at the structure here, and you'll see that there's a lot of information here, but there's no place for images, and for that matter there's no place for the body. There is a place for the title, which proves to be a problem for other reasons. I don't think I'll get into that, but there's it might be a surprise to people initially that there's really no place here for the data that's presented to the user. Essentially, the fields that are part of the node table consist of information that's used for internal reference: the node ID, the version ID, the type of node that it is, the language that the node represents, the status of the node, created date, change date, a comment on the node. That's also data, whether it's been promoted to the front page, sticky, and some translation information. So really all kind of technical stuff. If you have a peek at the values in some of these fields, you'll see that the node type can be page or stack item or any of these other things, but there's no place for the body or the images. And the way Drupal actually deals with this is it creates a field called a table actually called field data field image, and in there it holds the information for the image, including the field image ID, which refers to yet another table that has a list of disk files, the alt value that's presented in the HTML, the title value, the image width, the image height, and crucially this value called delta. So here, for example, is a set of two with a delta value of 0 and 1, a set of two images for this particular page. And here's another instance where this particular stack item has again two values for images, and I think we were looking at the one case where there were actually 3 images, and so there they are. So what happens? What happens is that Drupal essentially places all this detailed information in separate tables that it creates on the fly as you're configuring pages. And in the next screencast, I'll link what you've seen here to the material that's presented to the user. So this is Henrik Beshman of internetcommons.ca.